media. My pronouns are she and her. While we are kind of getting settled here today, I would appreciate it if you would like to rename yourself in the participants panel with your organization and also your pronouns if you so desire. You can also maybe say a little hello or welcome in the chat, and that would be really great. I'll give everybody a second to do that. All right. We got Andrew from the Tributary. Welcome. Well, I've heard a lot about y'all. I'm excited to maybe learn a little bit more. And Lisa from Policy Watch. That's awesome. All right. So just a little bit about our center. We're a Knight-funded center that exists to support local media through research, education, outreach, and practice. With me here today on my team is Sara Vasella, who is our program coordinator and communicator extraordinaire. She's running the Zoom and is probably someone that you spent time maybe communicating with about this webinar. Really appreciate Sara. Our center's vision is to be part of a more equitable and sustainable future for local news, the journalists who make it, and the communities that need it. We really see those three constituencies that we want to serve as interconnected, but a little bit separate with separate needs. And we do that through education, outreach, and practice. Table stakes is a big part of the way that we do that. We're currently recruiting for our 6th cohort right now. And so in my previous job at the Daily Tar Heel, I was part of cohort 2 of the program. And I got so much out of that experience that here I am now being, kind of part of running it. It feels very full circle. I'd like to introduce Charlie Baum, our program director. He's been part of the table stakes world since the beginning and is an expert in the field of performance-driven change, which is part of what one of the principles of the program. Charlie, welcome, and would you like to maybe tell us a little bit about what table stakes is?
Sure. So table stakes is kind of an affiliate program of the Media Transformation Challenge program, which is kind of an overall change management program for the industry that began in 2007. One of the participants was Jennifer Preston, who became the head of journalism for the Knight Foundation. And the idea back in 2016 was to say, could we bring similar tools in the first case to major metropolitan news organizations? And what would it look like? And there was a feeling when the program started in 2007, everything was sort of new and a lot was unknown. There was a tremendous amount of uncertainty. By 2016, there was a sense that more was known about what it would take for major metro organizations to be successful in migrating over to the digital arena. And there was a pioneer group, including the Dallas Morning News, the Minneapolis Star, Miami and Philly, who participated to lay out what you needed just to be in the game of digital news. And the term table stakes comes from poker. I'm not a poker player, but if you want to play at the $1 table, you got to have $1. If you want to play at the $5 table, you got to have $5, or you can't even be in the game. So table stakes became a set of 7 overall principles and guidance and guidelines for how to do that. The second part regarding fault lines from the Maynard Institute, there is a very strong pillar at understanding those audiences who have been underserved, harmed, or that you want to serve, and how to go about doing that, and how to think about fault lines of race, class, gender, etc., both in the audiences and communities that you engage with, as well as your own internal capabilities. A third part has to do, this is a very real program where a lot of programs you go to, it's interesting, they're great lectures, great peers, and you go home and you've got 4,000 emails and nothing changes. We turn that around to say, what is the performance challenge you'd like to realize, whether it's audience growth, deeper engagement, revenue diversification, et cetera. And the program and the cohort helps you be accountable to that. So every 3 months as this program meets, participants are required to present progress against their performance challenge. It's one of the tougher parts of the program, but it's what makes it real. And it's a key differentiator. And then the final component is executive coaching. Each team has a coach assigned to them who's very familiar with performance-driven change, the table stakes themselves, as well as fault lines to help you have the best experience you can. This particular program in North Carolina at UNC was an effort to say what it would be like to have a regional program, not just major metros spread across the country. And it turns out that UNC was, whoever picked it, it was a brilliant choice. The ecosystem in journalism ecosystem in North Carolina and the greater South is really rich. And UNC is a great convening point for it. So the difference in this program is that it began with largely North Carolina organizations spread to surrounding states, so that there is like a geographic network that has just been really rich in collaborations, which you'll hear more about today. So that's the program at UNC.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlie. And so now we're going to hear a little bit from our friends at the American Press Institute. We've got Kamaria Roberts and Emily Ristow here with us. API kind of administers the larger table stakes universe that we're a part of, and I would like to give them a little bit of time to tell y'all about that.
Thanks, Erica. I know that Kamaria had some tech issues, so hopefully she'll pop on for her part, but if not, I'll cover. But like Erica said, I'm Emily Ristow, and I'm with the American Press Institute. And part of our role here is coordinating across the various table stakes programs. So the UNC table stakes program is just one of a few programs in the US. There are programs for major metropolitan newspapers that API has managed, one for broadcast television at Arizona State. And then Gannett McClatchy has had an internal program serving their organizations. And then finally, there's a table stakes program that the Poynter Institute runs for small to medium independent newspapers, digital news outlets, and public radio. So if you found your way to this webinar and you are not a news organization based in the Southeast, the good news is there's probably still a table stake program that will work for you. So you can reach out to us and we can get you connected with those programs as well. But Charlie mentioned some of the tools and concepts in table stakes, and these are the basis of all of these table stakes programs. So part of our coordinating role at API is to manage this table stakes alumni community, because there are almost 170 news organizations in the US at this point that have gone through one of the table stakes programs. So we work on things to bring people together for like additional workshops and trainings, coaching hours, idea sharing, and peer learning. And then we also run some shorter term table stakes programs that are sort of like booster shots for specific challenge areas like subscription growth, serving diverse communities, and product development. So once you complete the table stakes program, we welcome you into this alumni community, and then you can continue to learn and grow with your fellow UNC alums, as well as your fellow alums from the other table stakes programs. And then another aspect of, it looks like Kamaria is still, yes. So another aspect of the coordinating role is betternews.org, which is a great resource for you now too. You can learn more about the table stakes themselves, as well as some of the methods used in the program. And then you can also read case studies written by alumni from the program. You're going to hear from some great and accomplished current and former table stakes alums in a little bit here. And you can see about more of the successes that have come out of the program through Better News. And if you find that you like those case studies and want to be notified whenever we publish new ones, that link on the screen, the /subscribe, you can sign up and get email notifications that way.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Emily. I definitely second betternews.org. There are some really wonderful case studies. If you're ever feeling kind of sad or down about the state of local news in our country, you can get a lot of hope and a lot of like kind of you can see a future and a path forward if you spend some time on that website, I believe. So definitely second that. All right, so now it's kind of the moment we've all been waiting for. We've got 4 current or past participants of the UNC Table Stakes program. I am going to let them all briefly introduce themselves and also kind of give a brief description of what their challenge was when they went through the program. So as Charlie mentioned, this is a challenge-based program and not a curriculum-based program, which means that you kind of work on your biggest challenge as you're going through the program. So what I would like for each of our panelists to do first is to briefly introduce themselves and their org, and then tell us about what their big challenge was that they worked through in the program. And Sara, since you're one of our, you're a current member, a member of the current cohort, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure. I am Sara Nagam. I'm the editor of the Border Belt Independent. We are a digital-only nonprofit, hyper-local news organization in southeastern North Carolina. We cover one of the poorest regions in the state. We focus heavily on health, education, government accountability. And we are still new. We just got started in March of 2021. So we just passed our 1-year anniversary just, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And yeah. Do you want me to continue on about what my challenge was?
Yeah, give us a little bit about what your challenge was.
So, and I assume you mean like our North Star statement.
Yeah.
Our North Star challenge statement was to be known and be a force for good. As a digital startup, one of our biggest challenges was just how do we get people to know that we exist and to read our stories.
All right, fantastic, thank you. And so from cohort 5, we'll go to cohort 4, Fernando.
Hola, hola, my name is Fernando Soto. My pronouns are he, him, él. I am the CEO and publisher of Nuestro Estado. We are based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and we inform Latinx communities across South Carolina, particularly with a focus on our undocumented population. We participated in table stakes in 2020, 2021, with our wanting to evolve from a startup that was just kind of testing the waters to a news organization with deep trust in our community, and that we sustained 2 full-time employees. We are still working on the 2 full-time employees. We have 1 full-time, 1 part-time, and 4 contractors now that we use regularly. When I started this program, it was just me. So it is really really helpful and transformational to be able to see how you can best serve your community, and also how you can build a roadmap to making sure that your work is sustainable.
Thank you. And now from cohort 3, we have Herb White from the Charlotte Post.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Herb, and I am editor-in-chief at the Charlotte Post, which dates back to 1906. So we are a legacy publication that covers the Black community in Charlotte, and the larger company, the Charlotte Post Publishing Company, has a newsroom in Durham, the Triangle Tribune. And our challenge in table stakes was to grow our revenue streams to wean ourselves from dependence on print advertising. And so what we set out to do was to launch programs, initiatives that would deliver on the promise of digital publication, as well as in-person gatherings. And it has done a lot of, it's done a lot of good for our company in terms of being able to free ourselves to brainstorm and barnstorm for that matter, when we go out into different communities to generate that revenue that helps us with our reporting.
Thank you. And then back to Cohort 2, one of my cohort mates, Nation Han of EdNC, who's also one of our current coaches in the program.
Hey, Nation with EdNC, Head of Growth. We are a single issue news site covering education. We cover the entire education continuum from birth to career. And when we joined Table Stakes, I guess it was in 2017, we basically only covered K through 12 education. And we're in the process of figuring out both how we launch new verticals and grow new audiences and fund sustainability. And happy to say that we accomplished that task hand in hand with a couple years worth of various table stakes programs, so much so that we still use a lot of the tools and methodologies. So happy to be here.
Fantastic. I have a few more questions for this panel, but if you have a question of your own, feel free to throw it in the chat and I will ask it to ask it out loud. So you don't have to wait till the end. If you've got a burning question, just go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll know that it's there. So one question I have for y'all is, I know that there's a lot of people here today or who'll be watching the recording of this wondering, is this program right for our organization right now? You know, they're wondering, is their team the right size? Is there problems relevant? Do they have enough time to do the program, right? I know those are some important questions that everyone has. I want to ask y'all what do you think is an important factor or, important factors to weigh in considering whether this program is the right fit at the right time? And I'm going to call on maybe Fernando to answer that first, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I think we really have to consider, the commitment that you give to this program, because it is, finding a solution to one of the biggest challenges that your newsroom will face. For me, I mean, when I started this, it was, I was wearing so many different hats, and I was wondering, like, how am I going to be able to do all of these things, right? But it really helps, especially once you get your assigned coach and they start walking you through looking at these balcony level views, right? Getting these big overviews of where your organization is and where you want to take it, was really helpful. But you really do have to be committed to not only the program, but ensuring that you're going to put all of these processes and things in place so that after the program, you can continue to carry out whatever it is that your challenge statement was. And then also, figuring out how are you going to better engage with audiences and running those experiments throughout the program. So I think it's doable, especially if you have a team, but you just have to be willing to commit to that.
Yeah. As someone who came in as a one-person team, right? But you didn't leave as a one-person team, and so that's kind of exciting. Herb, would you have anything that you'd like to add to that question? Or would you like to?
Sure. I think that the main thing is with our company, there was a little hesitancy at first in terms of, do we have the time, and would table stakes be something that would actually benefit us? Because coming from Black owned and oriented media, here was something that we were foreign to, that frankly we had concerns about. Is this something that would even be relevant to what we face as a company? Mm-hmm. But once we got into it, it was something that we were able to share in some challenges that we all face in this space in media. And so I think that if you are intentional about what it is that you want to be able to improve with your company, then this is a great vehicle to do that. And so we were intentional in terms of, well, we're looking for a way to improve the depth of our sustainability in terms of being able to have money that would allow us to hire more people to do better reporting. So if you're intentional and you want to be able to get to a goal, I would say absolutely, no matter what you have to do to get in and stay in, that's, if that's the goal, then this is the place to do it.
I love that answer. Nation, how about you?
Yeah, I think for us, we had an interesting journey where I think I initially lifted this up and said this might be a good idea. One of my colleagues agreed and pushed for it. And our CEO basically said, if you want to do it, that's fine, but you have to run it, meaning the colleague. And the first session was such a mess that we went back, and it wasn't really about us being ready or not on a staffing size wise. We were about 5 or 6 people, or resource question wise. It was just literally, we weren't sure if we were even aligned enough on what our goal was to stay in the program. And so we went back and actually thought about dropping out after session 1, and ended up in fact finding that while we thought we were ready, we really weren't. But then we got ready through the program, if that makes sense, right? It was actually the journey of participating and trial and error and learning what we didn't know that led us to a really thriving place, newsroom wise, by the end. And that included some people getting on the bus and some people getting off the bus, frankly. It included a fair amount of overall strategic shifts. And I think it in many ways laid the groundwork for like us making a fairly quantum leap as a newsroom in terms of how we approach audience, content, et cetera. But yeah, I thought we were ready, then I realized we weren't, but realizing we weren't ready was actually what revealed that we needed the program. So it was an up and down journey for us, but it landed in a great place.
So it's kind of having to face up to, we got to do this work, made you think about maybe some hard truths and move from there. I remember that first session. I do. Sara, how about you?
Yeah, if you would have asked me last fall, hey, do you want to go do table stakes? My answer was a resounding no to my boss, to be honest with you. I came from corporate, I came from McClatchy. Coming into this, I was a one-man band, a one-woman band at that point. My publisher kind of works part-time. And I said, oh my God, I don't have the bandwidth for that. I'm just trying to figure out what to do on a day-to-day basis, right? How to grow some sort of audience. But he pushed, and I'm so glad that he did, because, it really helped me, sort of what Nation was just saying. It helped me realize what I didn't know and what I didn't know that I needed to know. Right. So, I was going along. I thought I was doing some pretty good journalism, but I had no idea really which data to track. Coming from McClatchy, I had people who did all of that. Right. And there was just so much data out there. And I was like, well, how am I going to get a sense of how to measure success was really my biggest question. And table stakes really helped me do that. Say, track this, not that, do this, but not that. And yes, it has been immensely helpful to me over these past 8-9 months.
That's great. So this question is for Nation, Fernando, and Herb. Y'all are done with the program, but I want to know a little bit about what has stuck with you. And how has it continued to help you do your work since leaving the program? Nation, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. I mean, anyone who's been coached by me since would know that like these are my favorite tools, and you'll find that you have your favorite tools as you go through. But for us, design do loops, the idea of like bring in sprint methodology and then like the idea of benchmarking have been the things that probably have resonated the most, right? And so to this day, we still talk about design do loops, which is really, I won't get super in the weeds about it, but the idea is like stop talking so much and start doing, but also know why you're doing it and assess it along the way. And that's still core to our organization years later. And in fact, I was in a meeting right before this where we were planning sort of 2 concurrent design do loops. And so we would do bingo cards at the end of the year for our staff party. It's like almost always like 5 bingo blocks belong to me, and it's all table stakes tools that I still use incessantly. So
I love that. Herb, how about you?
With us, it was a lot of what we did, we've internalized. You talk about the design, do, fail fast, fail cheap. Those types of lessons have stayed with us. And coming out of table stakes, and when we were doing the final round of conversations about it, and I remember standing up in front of everybody telling them, take the T off table stakes. For me, it was able stakes. And what it did was it freed us to think outside of traditional media and look at things in a different light. And don't be afraid of trying stuff. Throw it up against the wall, see what happens. You can't go wrong. And if it does go off the rails, you have the authority, you've got the bandwidth, you have the green light to just say, you know what, that ain't working. Let's go try something new. And that ability, without having to adhere to a corporate mindset that is cut and dried, and if it's not working, something must be wrong with you, so you got to double down on it. That disappears when you go through this initiative. And so to me, that was the greatest lesson from it all, that you get out there, do what you do, and if it works, you're better off. If it's not working, go find something that will work. That is what, to me, that's why I call it able stakes, and I'm going to stick with that.
We have a new name. This is fantastic. And it's not all about poker, so that makes me happy too. I love that. Fernando, what's your answer to that question?
Yes, retweet to everything that's already been said. And yeah, for us, it's also, ingraining that into everything that we do. Those design do loops, ease, impact, assumptions versus knowledge, really has helped kind of take complex things and put them in a way that are a little bit more digestible for all of us, and especially now that we have a team of people that are involved. And I would also say that for people that are looking at this from a perspective of we're trying to reimagine what journalism is and how we serve our audiences and our communities. It's a great opportunity to do just that, to experiment. And, I think we have a lot of ingrained ideas from corporate media, if you guys come from that background, about the way that we should do things, but our world is evolving, our world is multicultural, and just experimenting with how can we kind of, be agile and pivot to the needs of our communities to ensure our success is really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. I'm also going to answer as a former participant as well. And for me, the thing that has stuck with me the most is the connection of the impact that I want to have as a journalist or as someone who runs the program I run now, and how you connect that to the day-to-day work of your organization. I like to say that a lot of times journalists we thrive in our roles because we're really good at tactics, and we're really good at doing kind of day-to-day tasks in a collaborative way, and we can do some really amazing things. But we've never really been taught a lot about strategy, and we've never really been taught a lot about, and I think a lot of times we shorthand the impact we want to have. We kind of skip to it's good for democracy, or we skip to, this is important for X reasons. And this program really makes you think through the steps of how what you do today can kind of build to the impact you want to have. And that's a very clarifying way to think. And it's something that I, in many, many years as a journalist, had never really had anyone explain to me. And so, thinking about how do I, kind of that idea of the North Star, the impact I want to have, the mission of my organization, and how we get there, as opposed to I'm just going to write a whole bunch of stories and hope that and hope that they have an impact. Those are two different things, and that, I think, to me, that's where the program has made the biggest difference for me personally. And like I said, feel free to throw questions into the chat. as you think of anything.
Can I say just one thing to build off that, Erica?
Yeah.
So for us on the content end, I just want to say this out loud because I was coaching 2 teams this morning about this very topic, which is, I think we got caught in the trap, in a well-meaning trap, and a well-intended trap, which is, right, like, let's produce articles that are interesting to us. Let's produce content that's interesting to us. Let's show up and do our jobs, right? So we publish Monday through Friday, and we had doubled our content. But there was really no one taking a step back and asking a couple of questions. One, like, who's the audience? 2, like, is there an audience, right? And we also weren't doing any analysis of whether there was an audience, whether audience folks actually came to the pieces or not. And once they came, were they doing anything with it, right? And so we had sort of fallen into this nonprofit trap of, like, and I say that as someone who spent most of my career in nonprofits, of, like, just doing the work and thinking that's enough and not thinking about the impact or the outcomes, to throw in a little Ra'ui language. And I think the moment we started asking, like, 3 or 4 very simple questions and being a little more judicious with our editorial, like, our traffic numbers began to skyrocket, right? And I think those things, like learning what you don't know, or what the questions you're not asking, might be the most helpful part of all, right? Beyond just the, like, baseline. I mean, so just want to double click on that.
Absolutely. All right, so my next question, and like I said, feel free to throw your own questions in the chat, and I'm going to open it up more widely too. But one thing that's different about our program versus some of the other table stakes programs is that we do have a variety of news organizations in our cohort, right? We'll have a 1 or 2 person startup in the same cohort as a legacy news, as a paper that serves a minority audience, or as a nonprofit versus locally owned versus corporate owned. We just have a lot of TV broadcast. We have just a lot of diversity within a cohort. And I think that does make our program a little bit different. And so I wanted to ask our panelists, like, what did you appreciate, and what did you appreciate about being in a cohort with news organizations that were really quite different than yours? Herb, I might call on you first, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. The thing that I think was a strength of our cohort is that we could get together with, let's say, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which was in our cohort, and we could talk to the folks in Atlanta, and they understood exactly where we were coming from, and vice versa. We understood where they were coming from, and we would, safe to say, we would steal ideas from each other or maybe share them. Yeah, that's better. And we would take the ideas that they were coming up with and say, well, you know what? Here's what we can do to apply it to our own situation. And they would come back and say, oh yeah, what you guys talked about, that's spot on. I think we'll go run with some of that. And it was like, well, who would have ever guessed? Because here's this Metro daily publication from a really large city, and here's a community publication that generally sticks to a historically marginalized group in an urban area, and we had so much in common. And also just hearing from other media who served in small towns, or came from broadcasting, and there was so much synergy and energy where you could throw off these ideas, and they're like, yeah, this is great stuff, and you can share those ideas, and you're not as different as you think you are. And that's a really great point to pivot on, where it's like, you know what? We got the same issues. We're all trying to survive and be fruitful ultimately. And those ideas were just massive for us in terms of helping us to understand where we are and where we want to go and how to go about it.
Hey, Erica, can I jump in on that for just a moment? Yeah. So I think also, if I'm sitting there as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and listening to the Charlotte Post, I'm also seeing from the Charlotte Post a group of folks who are really honest about who they were and what they care about and what they're trying to do, and folks with the courage to step in and try to do something about their situation. I would see an organization that was using the tools in various ways and putting themselves at risk, while doing this. We could see the commitment, and that is all beyond the common ways you might approach audiences, if you will, or some of the more technical things. You're also taking motivation, from this. I think in a lot of ways we're in the hope business, and against some challenges that everyone's facing. And there's a lot of mutuality in seeing how folks are dealing with that.
Erica, can I weigh in on that one too?
Yes, please.
I'm in the existing cohort, and I will say I have probably learned some of the best lessons from fellow small organizations that are geared toward minority readers. Like I said, I came from corporate journalism, which, is notorious for lumping all readers into one big thing and say, these are our readers. And I've really learned a lot, and I've appreciated those organizations' inputs throughout this cohort about how they cater to their readers specifically. There's one group, I think it runs like a magazine or a website for specifically geared to Black women. And I was like, wow, they just have wonderful things to say and great ideas about how to reach that audience. And in Southeastern North Carolina, we have a huge Native American population. And it has really sort of shifted my thinking, and that, oh yes, we have to approach readers, individually. You can't just think of, hey, these people are going to read this story. Well, who are these people, and what matters to them, and culturally, and historically even. It's one of the things I've really enjoyed most about Table Stakes.
Fantastic. Fernando or Nation, would y'all like to jump in on that question?
Yeah. I think there's so much to learn from each other. I appreciated being one of those publications that is trying to serve, an underserved community, and sharing kind of my experience in those ideas. But also I had so much to learn from people that have been doing it for a long time, or that worked for, legacy papers, and helping them, grapple with, maybe some historic things that were happening in the newsroom where they weren't covering Black and Brown communities, and now they were trying to, fix that. I think ultimately the folks that are in this program are people who are passionate about journalism and are passionate about telling stories, and really take, pride in our profession. And so there was just so much to learn from one another, from large organizations learning about how they carry out, their subscription revenue models, and, getting those ideas on, okay, what will I need further down the road to kind of map out my organization as we build out something a little bit different, that hasn't been done in our region.
Nation, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think just echo everyone, but I would say that just having other people to call that are not in your newsroom to ask questions, even on a personal level, like, hey, this editor we just hired is getting on my nerves. What do I do about it? Like, it's super important. So I would encourage folks. I mean, it's harder in the virtual, but now that we're back to more of a hybrid, like, take advantage of the relationships too. Don't just like come in with your people, eat with your people, go home with your people, and not just and look for opportunities to connect sort of personally.
Yeah. And I'll add a little bit of, one thing that I remember from my experience is feeling like when we first started the program, I was the only professional staff member at the Daily Tar Heel. I felt very small, and compared to some of the big newsrooms, similarly to what Herb was saying. And I remember wondering, like, is this program for us? Am I going to be able to do all of this? Everyone else has more data than me, and they've got more people and more tools. And I got to learn from them. But at the same time, as the program went on, I got to see where I had some strengths and some organizational agility that they didn't have. And so there was a little bit of, like, I realized that not only, it's not just that the grass is always greener in a different news organization, but that you can see what strengths you have and what you can bring to the program and to your organization, while also learning from the other folks. And I think that's actually really valuable, to kind of see where you fit in and what you can do, and what makes your organization special and in some way.
Erica, just allow me to piggyback on that with this one other thing. Don't sell yourself short. That's the number one thing that we got out of all of this is, well, you're never too small. Your newsroom is never too tiny. As long as you got one person in there, you have capability, and an initiative like Table Stakes will help you expand on that. And so, I liken this to, the media ecosystem is sort of like the ocean. Everybody talks about the majestic whales or or sharks or whatever. But, to me, plankton is just as important in that ecosystem. It's small, but without plankton, you don't get the whales.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying.
No, I think you're right. And I think that's it. It's really, really important. I'm getting on my soapbox, I shouldn't, but sometimes I think a lot about how this program takes a lot of folks who are working alone or working in small places, and are not very connected, and it connects them to a larger world, and helps them tell their own story better and realize a lot of things about their own organizations and their cell and what they're capable of, and how they fit into this bigger picture. And I think that's also pretty, that's how I felt. And I hope that other people can have that experience as well.
Plankton
Can I talk about
Unite.
that a little bit? Yes,
Yeah.
Plankton Unite. About it, you just touched on something that is very true for me. And when I came into it, I was thinking about oh my gosh, these people have all of these revenue streams and they know how to price their models out, and I have a very small audience, and how am I gonna make it through this? But in a way, this is a great opportunity to hype yourself up about the work that you're doing, because it's meaningful, it's impactful, and there's so much value into the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and informing people and connecting. And beyond the program, yes, finding other people that begin to reach out, other organizations that are uplifting our work, has been really, really helpful for our growth. So yeah, what UNC Table Stakes did for us was really monumental, I think, at the beginning, because we've now connected, further with API, we've connected with other nonprofits, we've connected with other newsrooms that just make our work that much stronger.
Yeah, agreed. We have a question in the chat from Lisa. Would you like to unmute and ask it?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds amazing, and we're definitely interested. I just have a nuts and bolts question when people talk about the time commitment and things like that. If you could maybe take us through a typical month or what the time commitment is, and just give us some more information on that level.
Yeah, I'll give a little broad outline, and then I'll let some of the participants fill in a little bit. So, it's a year-long program. We meet in person we meet together 5 times, and we're looking at doing that 3 times in person and 2 times virtually this year. We figured out there's a lot we can do hybrid. There's a lot we can do via Zoom, which helps small newsrooms out, but then there's also a lot that we need to do in person. So we've got this hybrid model. That's usually 2 days together. And then you also have a coach that you get assigned, and you meet with your coach for half an hour or so every week to 2 weeks, especially at the beginning. That those coaching calls might get a little more spread out as the year goes on. And so you've kind of got, that's maybe the hard time. But then, the goal is to create a challenge that so that your work that you're doing in Table Stakes is the work you're doing. And so it's not necessarily adding time to your day, but maybe the goal would be that it helps you do your job more efficiently. But I'll let some of the participants kind of maybe get into their thoughts on time commitment, and anyone can jump in.
I'll elaborate on that. You're working on the things that you're already working on. And it really is helpful, to be able to meet with our coach. Meeting with Lizzie, who was my coach, weekly, kind of really helped me brainstorm and bounce ideas, and also get a lot of great feedback on maybe I was, too in the weeds on something and I was just overthinking on how to take a step back and kind of simplify it a little bit better. And like, for example, we tried out newsletters, we tried out, different ways of reaching and engaging our audience that we weren't trying already. One of the big things that we worked on was lessening our dependency on Facebook, right? Because it's ever changing every day, and every day it seems like it's hurting news publishers more and more. So how do we take our audience outside of Facebook so that they're coming directly and engaging in other ways? So it was a lot of things that we wanted to do that were benefiting that work. So I never felt like I had loads of homework or things that I had to deliver upon that weren't impactful.
Yeah, I would echo that. Lisa, I saw that you said something earlier in the chat about, this constant struggle with quantity versus quality. And we deal with that too at Border Belt. And I think that one thing that has been really helpful with my coach is really sort of looking at which of our stories perform the best and finding trends in there. And it really has helped us make better informed decisions about which stories we should do and which stories we shouldn't. And again, that is well worth the time, right? To go and spend an hour in that data, because you're right. We don't have the bandwidth to do stories just for the sake of doing them, right? They need to be impactful. We need to choose wisely.
I think with regard to this time commitment, it really gets to the heart of the matter here. We ask you to pick the challenge that is most important for you to succeed with this year. That's it. And we think that this is the most efficient process for you to do that. And the underlying value proposition of these programs is increasing the odds. I'm not a Vegas guy, but the idea is if you were to go to Vegas and bet on these teams with table stakes or without table stakes, the bet would change, based on that. So you have aspirations or things you want to do, you need to do them. This program is the vehicle by which, I don't think there's an easier way, frankly, to make it happen. That doesn't mean it's not hard work. It would be harder work without the program. And participants, feel free to disagree with that. But that's what we see.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback a little bit on something Fernando just said, which was that he talked about his relationship with his coach, Lizzie, and we haven't talked a lot about the coaching relationship, but I wanted to kind of bring it back to that a little bit and say that one thing to kind of know is that you get a coach, you don't get a consultant. And you don't get someone that's going to come in and solve your problems for you and deliver a report or anything like that. The coach is there to push, to hold you accountable, to connect you, bounce ideas off with you, but it's going to do your work for you. And I think that's kind of an important thing to kind of think about. You're getting access to some world-class journalism minds in this program, and you can talk to you can talk to all the coaches, not just your assigned coach, but your assigned coach is the person who's really kind of rooting for you and helping you succeed in the way that a coach does.
And that was one of the benefits that we got, because Ryan Tuck was our main coach. But we picked everybody's brain, and by the time we finished with them, or they finished with us, we were better armed to go out and do that work. And so that commitment, I looked at it more from the standpoint of, it's not a matter of, well, can I commit that time? It was more like, how can you not commit that time in order to get what you're trying to do ultimately?
Absolutely. Other questions, either, high level or, down on, we said view from the balcony, view from the dance floor. Any questions about big picture or nitty gritty? that y'all would like to ask. All right. Well, I sure appreciate all of y'all's attention, your excellent comments. I can't say enough about our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your experiences, your expertise. These are kind of 4 superstars in our world, and I just really can't thank you enough for taking this time. Kind of next steps is, as many of you know, we are taking applications for the cohort. We're looking to start in November. If you haven't done so yet, we do ask you to kind of book a one-on-one meeting with myself and Charlie to kind of talk a little bit deeper about your organization and your needs and whether it might be a good fit. And we would really hope that y'all can do that. But yeah, so if anybody has anything else that they would like to say, I just want to say thanks so much. This has been a very heartwarming hour of my life. And I appreciate you guys so much. All right then. Thank you.
Thank you.